Hello, and welcome to a Kraken Ford live stream. Let's see, we got a Darren, a David, and a Dale all join. Welcome to the South London Reseller, and young Sean, welcome to you. Hello, Green Thumb. Where's my face? Wait 1 second. There we go. I'm alive. Good morning, good day, and afternoon, good evening to you all, wherever you are. Let me sip my tea. Lots to talk about today. Hopefully you'll have lots of questions too. Hello, Carl. Hello, Helen from sunny South Dakota. Hope you're all well, and everything's going tickety-boo. Lots of things to talk about. So, first off, how is everybody? Are we all good? I can't remember the last time I did a live stream. It's been a bit of a crazy few weeks for various reasons. You know, my house almost fell down. I broke the mythology database completely, and I'm well behind on everything I'm trying to do. Drinking tea. Well done, Isabella. It's cold in Minnesota. Hello, Kitty. So, where do we begin? I can begin with, can I? I'm so untechnical. Right. Let me share something humorous with you. Well, humorous, you may enjoy yourself. Here we go. I wanted to talk about ancient domestic dogs, because there was something in the news, some papers released about them. And obviously you don't necessarily use AI to draw a picture of a caveman with a dog, or a hunter-gatherer with a dog, more specifically. So I've got an old picture of me with a dog. So I hope that counts. I'm not in the Mesolithic period. Hello, Valagast. But just to say, one of the things we're going to talk about are what is often quoted as man's best friend, but probably everybody's best friend. So what we're going to talk about dogs. So let's just jump straight into it, really. Oh, I had hair back then. Yes, I used to have. Well, I liked heavy metal and those things in my teenage years, so I had very long hair at one point. And then it all got very fed up with being there. I don't think I was adorable. But yes, thank you. So I'm a bit embarrassed now. I wasn't expecting that. So, yes, dogs. What has happened with dogs? Let me see if I can show you a little picture. Thank you. So, what happened is that let me get rid of the comments so you can see the whole map. Some DNA analysis was done on a number of dog bones, 216, if I'm correct. And this is the first time it's really been done on DNA, to the extent that one had enough DNA to understand if the dog was a dog or whether it was actually a wolf. Usually we rely on, or the archaeologists rely on, visual clues of the bones, but they just looked at the DNA, and this came up with some wonderful sort of things that we now know, which is that humans had dogs as pets over 15,000 years ago. Not only that, they also see that the dogs in Anatolia, in Turkey, 15,800 years old at least, and the dog in Britain at 14,300 years old at least, were genetically related. So this means that dogs didn't follow human migration through, let's say, the agricultural revolution, which sort of happened about 12,000 years ago, because dogs were already across Europe. So, and what they could also distinguish from this DNA is that different breeds were starting to develop already. So that was really quite interesting. We still don't know where dogs first were domesticated or exactly when, but very interesting at least. So let me say, let's see if everyone else here. Hello, MTV, Brett. Hello, Mary. Hello, Bungle. Hello, Lindsay. Hello, son of the hut. Sean says wolves, coyotes, foxes, and other wild dogs. Yes. So, right, I've broken my system already. There we go. Right, let's come back on the stage and people can see what's talking about. So, yeah, very interesting. I thought that, let's say, because usually the DNA is so corrupted that people like the archaeologists were unable to get sort of enough of it to compare, but they used special techniques to make the DNA more powerful, and this allowed them to see that. So late Paleolithic, yes, early Mesolithic periods. So yes, certainly pre-agriculture. We always thought the dogs were, well, I'd say around probably, they're around in the Ice Age in effect at this point. But yeah, and which can be sexually interbred. Well, yes, we can. What dogs could be interbred, and how do they create different domestic breeds? And so there aren't, or we haven't seen, or I haven't seen any examples of domesticated dogs in the Americas as part of this study. This was pretty much Europe and into West Asia. Okay, so someone recommend David Ian Howe's video on dog domestication. Yes. So David, this was a paper that came out this week. So hopefully if David's covered that would be brilliant for people to watch if he has. That would be fantastic. But yeah, so that was the first bit of news we'll talk about. So it'll be interesting if we can see stories with dogs in things like the mythology database to see if that helps us understand if we can see sort of some distribution there. So that's perhaps something we can look at in the future. Now, the other thing that came up was a paper by David Reich. And so if you don't know Reich's work, he is a well-known DNA archaeologist, I guess. He's written some wonderful theories and had some wonderful hypotheses. And he wrote an essay about Neanderthals. And this is quite interesting because over the last month or two, it has been thought that the skulls have been found in China that are close to 1 million years old, that are thought to be closely related to Homo sapiens. And so Homo sapiens have been around potentially for longer than we think. We think that from this hominin family, we see Denisovans and Neanderthals split from the same ancestors as Homo sapiens between 750,000 and 400,000 years, that sort of time, to create these. Now, I've always had a bit of a issue with that in a way that I've always, because Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, and now we know Denisovans and Homo sapiens interbred and successfully interbred, then could you really regard them as separate species? And the thing is, I think sometimes we find in research that we have to create some clickbait, as you call it, clickbait, so some great headlines in order to get papers published and to get funding for your research. So part of me thinks, yes, the Neanderthals did look, a little different to us. And if you can get lots of money for research by calling them Neanderthals rather than a different type of Homo sapien, all well and good. But what David Reich has done is I've summarized the paper here on this little slide. So he has basically said that nuclear DNA shows that Neanderthals and Denisovans split from Homo sapiens around 760,000 years ago. But mitochondrial DNA, which is the DNA passed from females, and Y chromosomes show a 400,000 year ago split between humans and Neanderthals. So there's a bit of ambiguity there, let's say. And so what Reich's papers proposed is that what if a group of humans found themselves stuck somewhere, like say in the middle of Europe or maybe Spain or something like that, surrounded by a population of more archaic hominins, maybe Homo erectus or something like that, and interbred. What would happen is that those Homo sapiens would have Homo sapien technology of the time, because we see Neanderthals and Homo sapiens 300,000 years ago have the same type of stone tools. So this population would have the same technology as Homo sapiens, but because they are now trapped in this sort of landscape which is surrounded by a more archaic hominin, the interbreeding with them would actually increase the levels of archaic DNA within the Homo sapiens, and therefore it would basically look like they are an archaic form of hominin rather than Homo sapiens after a period of time. And Reich has run a number of simulations based on geographical regions around Eurasia and into Africa, and this is what he thinks could possibly have happened. And the same premise could be used to argue that's why we see a lot of diversity in sub-Saharan Africa as well. So if you're not familiar with that, then you could take two people from literally neighboring tribes in sub-Saharan Africa and compare them, and they will have more diverse DNA than comparing someone from Ireland and say a First Nation Australian. The First Nation Australian and someone from maybe Ireland or Iceland or something like that will be more closely related than two people who live 100 miles apart in Africa. So that was a great way of explaining that. And I think that's quite interesting that, and that would make sense. It would make sense why they could carry on breeding successfully and have fertile offspring. Doesn't necessarily explain some of the traits we see in terms of it looks like only male Neanderthals bred with female Homo sapiens. There's all sorts of thoughts around that. But I thought that was really interesting by David Reich. So if you look for his paper, A Hypothesis on a Modern Human Range Expansion 300,000 years ago, that's free to download for everyone. So let me just read what else is going on. People talking about mixing dogs. Oh, right, you can breed different dogs. Some people aren't interested in humans, more interested in animals, and we get that. We get that. So that is, that's something else that happened. And I think that's very interesting. And one of the other things I've done, in fact, I haven't. Can I show you here? Because I noticed a few more people are using this tool now. There's a tool. I'm just trying to. How do I? There we go. Right. There's a website. If you're not familiar with it, called. Let me just see if I can remember its name. I think it's called FloodMap. FloodMap.net. FloodMap.net. Let me share my screen again and show you this. So this is really quite interesting. So one of the things I like to understand is how humans migrated across the world and things like that. And what we can tell is that we know sea levels lowered or a lot lower during the Ice Age. But what people don't really understand is the impact of this. Now, this isn't exactly a tool that shows you where everything was, because it is based on land elevation and adjust that to sea level. So it isn't entirely accurate for how things would look, but it gives you a rough idea. Now, we can say about 20,000 years ago that sea levels were probably 100 to 150 meters lower than they were today. And if we do that, it's really interesting on this map. You can see how much land there is. You can see, so you've got things like Doggerlands visible. We got easier migrations path from Italy into Greece, because I know there are mountain ranges, the Alps, which prevented some migration paths. Some of the seas were smaller. You got like people think out of Africa went via uh, what we call the Suez Canal sort of route into the Near East, but we can actually see that it was possible to cross from Africa into the Arabian Peninsula there. And if we go down to this is Asia, you can see there's quite a good walk as people, the First Nation Australians arrived in Australia. So it's a really interesting map. But I just wanted to share that because if you're interested in DNA spread, it's really interesting to look at these maps, and also interesting to see how seas have changed and things like that. So I'm not too sure. I think sea levels have always risen, but it'll be. I know the Caspian Sea, for example, used to be a lot bigger. So let's say we can do a 50-meter map. So if you look at that, at one point, Caspian Sea, which is the large lake in the middle of, or sea in the middle of the map, was a lot bigger. And so if you think about migration paths of agricultural farmers, so they come from the Near East into Turkey and into Europe, there were the Caucasus here, but they were really sort of cut off even if they went through that because of this water. So we don't see really migrations of farmers going up into what is now Western Russia and into Scandinavia. But we do find a little later on the Indo-Europeans who were on the Black Sea do go up into Scandinavia. So yeah, it's a very interesting website worth going to, floodmap.net, if you're interested in that. So let me I'll put that in chat in case you want to go visit that. So let me make sure there's no questions. Someone's talking about Anunnaki. Right. So let me talk about the other thing I've been doing, which is the mythology database, and then we can start talking about the Odyssey and Iliad and Homer, which is really the main thing I wanted to talk about. So let me get a presentation up because I've made a presentation, made lots of changes to the mythology database. So basically, if you've been following the story over the last couple of months, I have retranslated the narratives from Bereskin's analytical catalogue so I can have better information in the mythology database. And I compare translations with my own translations I did earlier. I used my own self-developed tools, and I felt that the narratives were probably better translated. Not by a lot, but enough to make a difference. And so I took the decision, wise or not, that I will put that new data into the database. Now, the trouble is the Bereskin's analytical catalogue has lots of data corruption in it. You can't just pick it up and put it in. You have to fix about 10,000 formatting errors. And these aren't regular or fit a pattern. You literally have to go in and manually fix it. And myself and a few of my friends did a lot of work to do that for the original set of data in the mythology database. And so, having retranslated it all to hopefully better form, we now have the same problem again, that even now we've got better translation, it's still stored within data sets that are corrupt. So there's a slow process of how do we fix this. And this is where AI comes in, because what I've spent probably the last few weeks on is writing a computer program that's linked to my own little computer. I can't really afford to use AI services like the APIs because it would just cost too much with the amount of data we're doing. So I've got this little Mac Mini, and I've written a program on that which goes through each translated part of data and checks its formatting, and if it's corrupt, it makes the best guess on how to fix that formatting. And it's doing that with absolute wondrous precision, almost perfectly. I'm getting probably a full 2 or 3% error rate. So it's doing really well. I've probably done about 1,500 motifs out of the 3,500 Bereskin has. So that's Fantastic. So once we have those motifs sort of formatted, I can then put them in the database, and I've started to do that. So let me show you some other news that is going on with the mythology database. Right. So the first thing is the mythology database is no longer called the mythology database. So as of now, I'm calling it the folklore database. And why is that? The old URL, so the old website names will still work. But what it means is that folklore covers mythology and folktales and legends. So, and all sorts of narratives. So I felt that's probably a better way to describe it. So hope all that makes sense. That was really quite simple to say, but the old URLs work, so everybody will know where it is. In terms of the work I've been doing, we have better translations for 34,634 narratives. So that's how many we translated. We have fixed around 7,500 errors in the data, but there's still lots more to go. But yeah, the one big thing I've had is that whilst the narrative translations are better, the AI was much worse at translating cultural names. Much worse. The sense that I have 4,000 cultural names that make no sense, and I'm now have to literally manually translate those. And that's really challenging because you have no clue what they're meant to be. And I've probably done about 500 of those manually, but I've got so many more to do. But that is going on. But I have added 4,000 narratives already to the database, maybe 5,000 by now. And it's just made a huge difference. It's finding more data because we've sorted the corruption. It's finding more data. Let me show you an example of that. So K27 is the biggest motif in the mythology database. It's got about 1,000 narratives within it. It's like an adventure, dragon slaying, hero's journey type motif. And on the left, you see what was there in the database before I did this work. That it found 211 traditions. But now, if you look on the right, it has now found 468 traditions. So it's literally doubled the amount of data it's been able to pull out of this large sort of change we're doing on this large motif. And I think that is just incredible. That will just change everything. So the quality of data has improved immeasurably, but also some other wonderful things have happened. So let me show you how we can use more data. But before I do it, let me just check the chat. I saw some things going along. Right, okay, so I'll come back to these questions in a second. So, yes, right. So, if I get the mythology database up for you, so I've logged on. This is mythology database. Now, if I look for something, shamans, so I look for shamans because I know within the mythology database, there is a K27 motif which has shamans in it. I think that's the Inuit to have that, but it comes up. You see the maps like always. Now, if you look for K27 down here, we get all the motifs that have shamans in, all the stories. If I go to K27, because I know I've processed data on that. Here we go, K27, task and completions. So central UPIC. If we read that now, what we find, what's changed is that we've actually got the right narrative in case that was different. But what's really important is because I've now got the data properly, we can get the source of that data. So what that means is if you wanted to read this story and see where it come from, Krenov 1951, you can go over to the bibliography section. I'll open that in a new link. And there, if we look up Krenov, so you click K, we'll shoot all the way down to the Ks. And I'll just scroll down to Krenov. We will hopefully find there you go, Krenov 1951. So, and there's you have the book you should reference if you wanted to find about shamans on this particular hero's type journey. And then what I've also added, you might not be able to see, is up at the top, I use Zotero as my paper publisher. I've added a sort of a coins metadata in the page, so you can add the page reference to your Zotero if you use that. But also you can now download with this button in the middle of the screen, an RIS file, which you can import into Mendeley or Zotero, whatever paper management software you use. So, I mean, it may not look much different, but the quality of data now is just so much different. It's so much better to be able to get your references, which is really important if you're studying and you're writing essays. So that is where we have been. Right, so let me, there was a question I saw somewhere. Right. Thank you. Yes. So, feedback. Thank you. What I want to say is thank you to all the patrons and YouTube members, because your financial support is what drives the mythology database development, and it also allows me to do some research by occasionally buying books or subscribing to services I would not otherwise be able to. So I appreciate that nod, and for everybody who helps. I know times are tough. I say this a lot. I don't do this for money. This isn't my job. I'm retired, and I can live on cups of tea and books, reading books. But all the time I can do work and do research and develop this mythology database or folklore database. I will. It's very. I don't know how to describe it. It just, it feels like I'm giving something back. And eventually, the plan will be, because I won't be around forever, that at some point then I can gift this to institutions or to the world somehow, and it can be developed and maintained. So one of the other things I forgot to mention is that the way I now handle data, because the data is structured properly with the tooling I'm using in the background to go through these, it now means that we can add submitted narratives. So everybody who has submitted narratives, those narratives, providing they're validated properly. So I have a number of PhD students who have offered their support to me in terms of looking and researching narratives that are submitted to make sure they're proper, they verify them. They will now also be added to the database. So you all can now contribute to the mythology database with stories. So all you need to know is a narrative. You have to know where we can find a source for it. That's really important, where it's from. And that's the basics we need. And if we've got that, then we're good to go. So hopefully that's, just thank you. Thank you. It's we are really changing research. And it is not an exaggeration to say, probably a few times a week, I'm getting emails from universities and students and researchers and professors asking for help on work on the mythology database in terms of finding data, presenting data, things like that. So it's a absolutely valuable tool in terms of research, not only for folklore, but also being used in the social sciences to try and understand how people used to behave and live thousands of years ago. So thank you. I have a question from Stuart. Any thoughts on the latest paper about Monteverde, and how does this tie in with the mythology of America? I'm not familiar with a new paper by Monteverde. Let me see. Oh, so this is Chile, isn't it? Yes. I am not convinced there was any people in North America before the last glacial maximum. I think we do find things that we think are potentially human-made. I think that paper talked about the evidence they found had probably been moved by flooding or or water in some way, and that may have corrupted the data somehow. But yeah, I'm not convinced. And the reason I say that in terms of mythology and folklore is that we see mythology in the Americas, and we clearly see there are 4 distinct migrations of mythology into the Americas, and they all coincide with the glacial maximum and the Inuit migration about 5,000 years ago or so. There's no others. So if a population did go there, they were completely wiped out, and we have no evidence of them, which would be odd if they're already in Chile. But saying that, humans do migrate really quickly. I'm pretty convinced humans, when they did migrate out of sort of Africa, Saudi Arabia on the final major migration about 55,000 years ago, they were in Australia within 1,000 years, if not 100 years. People like to move in. So it's possible that people got to the Americas and in a few hundred years were down to Chile. We would expect to find evidence. But there was a lot of snow and glaciers around in North America, so perhaps that's removed lots of evidence. But we just don't see it. So I'm not convinced yet, but I am open-minded, always open-minded. So I'm just there's some questions, just making sure I understand. Right, so good question by Sean. Speaking of dragons, and by the way, sorry, if you're new here, hello, I'm John White, and I am a researcher in mythology. And if you've got a question for me, just put question at the start of your comment, and then when I'm whizzing down the comments, I'll see that it's question and I'll answer it for you. Sean knows he's a great supporter of this work. So, speaking of dragons, have you heard of the Ichneumon, the dragon fighting animal? It is mythological, but it was sometimes associated with the mongoose. Ichneumon. I have not heard of that. I've not heard of that. Do you know what I'm going to do? I am going to see if it appears in any of my work. And if it does, I can then... Yeah. And no. Plutarch talked about it, apparently. Plutarch's Morals, it appears. Oh, yeah. So, but no, I wasn't aware of that, Sean. It'd be interesting to see in what context that appears. Is it just the stories of that animal fighting dragons, or is it part of a journey, or a task, a series of labours, so to speak? Be interesting in that. Someone says I don't know, one CME in our direction, and all your work is gone. Right. So, just to let you all know, because I broke the mythology database because I'm an idiot. What did I do? I can't remember. I ran out of disk space, and in an attempt to try and create disk space, I used an automatic command in Linux to free up uninstalled applications or applications that are no longer required, and it went wrong, and it uninstalled applications that are required, like the database software. But I do back up. So every time I make a change to the database, I back up an image of the database on AWS. I have all the code locally. I have a database download locally. I back that local backup to another local backup, then that to another local backup, then that to a network backup, and then that to a cloud-based backup, as well as it being on in the cloud anyway, being served. So I've got lots of backups, and I've got a nice library. It is a nice library, and I have promised to show you around. I just don't have the equipment. I've tried to do it, and it looks rubbish. I need better lights and a more mobile camera, but I will do that sometimes. But yes, a good library with even more books would be lovely. But yes, I can never have enough books. Right. Question, am I a programmer also? So yes, I spent much of my career in IT, primarily because it pays a lot better than being an academic. and particularly, uh, I've been as soon as I first got my first computer back in 19. Well, I first programmed a computer in 1979. My neighbour, who was they had a son who's a teenager, who was 14. He had I think it probably was a Z80 machine, and we spent one night when he got it, like doing peeks and pokes, which you had to do at the time to read memory and just memory, to just make a cursor go around the screen. And at that point, I was hooked. I was 11, uh, and yeah, and I got a home computer, and I just took to it like a duck to water. So yes, also the whole mythology database is coded by me. Now, literally 2 days ago, I actually put some code into an AI model to see if it would help me, and it found a security issue with one piece of my code, and I fixed that using AI. So, I mean, I spent so much time developing, but it may be that I can start using AI to help me develop the mythology database further, which would just make things so much better. And what also helps is that because I am very IT literate, you tend to find in the humanities, moaning people are not IT literate. So it's I'm in a really sweet spot of being able to contribute. If I had to contribute something, yes, I can write papers and things, but actually deliver the mythology database is probably something that I'm in a very privileged and unique position to do. So yeah, that's why we've gone this route, really. And it also helps me out because I use the mythology database all the time. So, all right. So Sean says about the Ichneumon, it fights dragons, but first covers itself in mud and covers its nostrils with its tail before fighting for some reason. You just ran across it. Well, hopefully you didn't hurt it when you ran across it. It might eat you, Sean. So be careful. So yeah, no, I get what you mean. Yeah, that's strange. I haven't heard of it. What? So wait, someone's trying to guess my age. I figured you were about my age of 50. No, I am 56. What? 7, 8, 57, I think. Which isn't. That's old. So yes, I think I'm 58. I'll be 58 this year. So yeah, but far too old to not drink tea. So Sean has just said you're a PhD environmental chemist. Wow. To study myth and these things. Yes. So Sean on various channels asking great questions. He asked me loads of questions. So if you're a patron, you can ask questions, or a YouTube member, you can ask me questions on mythology, and I'll do my best to answer them. I had an interesting one today asking about who were the Celtic divine twins, which we don't actually know, but it was interesting to see if I could find sources for anything, and I found sources for a couple of ideas that maybe. But yeah, it's just this is the joy of having a lovely environment with lovely people. You can have great discussions about all these things. So then we had to take another sip of tea, and then we get onto the Odyssey and Homer and the Iliad and things that have irked me, and some really interesting news. So now, I don't know, some of you may not have followed all my work, but I made a video a little while ago. I think it was on Troy. And in it, I talk about the Iliad. So Homer's Iliad is, most people associate it with Troy. Classicists would associate it with marriages. As a mythologist, we associate it with the motif of the major supreme god wanted to kill humans because the world is too noisy. So what we see in the Iliad is patterns, mythemes of various things taking place. And what's really interesting is those mythemes are repeated in another epic, many of them, and that is the Mahabharata, which is a huge, I think it's 11 book. I can tell 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 book epic from India. And that contains some of the motifs that are in the Iliad. Now, the Iliad and the Odyssey are often considered together, but they're actually part of a larger Greek cycle of which we've lost the other books, although we do see references to them, so we know what they are. Uh, but yeah, we just don't have them. So it's interesting that actually, could you argue that if the Mahabharata has some of the things of the Iliad, then was there an earlier source story which they flowed? And if there is, that source story is probably over 3,000 years old, so much older than the age we give to the Iliad, which means that there was all these stories about these things going on long before that. And that's interesting. But then what does that say about the other stories? And this is where the Odyssey comes in. So the first thing, and a slightly off topic, is when Christopher Nolan started filming the Odyssey, I saw lots of YouTubers talk about how Christopher Nolan wasn't true to how the soldiers would have looked at the time of the Odyssey. And it was saying, oh, the wrong helmet. And if they've actually read the Odyssey, you realise that actually even Homer doesn't even know the armour the people are wearing, because it's a different time. So it just makes no sense to sort of argue about those sort of things. And I'm not going to touch on that. I'd rather touch on the story. Now, the Odyssey is basically a journey where someone leaves their world and goes to a sort of a mythical place, has lots of challenges with monstrous women and giants and all sorts before getting home again. And that is a motif called the Wanderer, L135, I believe that is in the mythology database, which I have updated. And I think there's B68 as well. I'll confirm that when I make the video, because I'm going to make a video on what I'm about to tell you. And so there's this motif, and actually, Bearskin of the Bearskin Analytical Catalog fame did some work on the motif of found it in the Odyssey, and saw that actually there's a great distribution in the Americas and across Eurasia. And the only way, or not the only way, but looking at how that could have happened, the most probabilistic outcome in his view was that this story of someone going to a mythical world to combat these particularly strange things and return is probably a story that started before the last ice age, before the last glacial maximum, because that allowed the story not only to spread across Eurasia, but also then go to the Americas. Which means that Homer's Odyssey has roots back tens of thousands of years. And then what's even, you could argue, for a bit of fun, is that there are some who believe that the Gospels of Jesus, because they were written in Greek by Greek scholars who were probably trained and were familiar with Homer's work, often contain motifs that could be argued to be parallel to some of the things we find in Homer's work. And so you could then argue that some of the root of the Gospel stories go back to pre-Ice Age. So absolutely fascinating. So what I'm going to do in my next video is to do that. And I wanted to have that out today. But unfortunately, I've been distracted by breaking my database. I had a real issue in my home that the place is a mess, but the issue's fixed. So I've been quite distracted. But I will now pause my work on the mythology database and make the next video, and then make another video after that. So you have one for April as well, because I'll try to create at least one good video a month for you all. A big long form video, and hopefully we'll be up to speed, and then I can focus on the mythology database again and get that data up. But all in all, I hope to have the video out next week on the Odyssey, and it being probably over 20,000 years old. And yeah, well, I think that's it really. And yeah, the mythology database, I'll put details in of what motifs are fixed, or whether an indication of them maybe somehow for you all to see if you're interested. So I think that is everything for now. Right. Oh, questions. Right. Let me ask some more questions. Some sites have now some sort of verification against AI accessing information. Does Folklore database have free access for AIs? No. So the Folklore database has a notice on it saying, please don't scrape the data if you're an AI. So I'll have a legal fallback if someone does. But I also have a thing in there to see that if a user scrapes too much information too quickly, it then blocks that user, because I did find that some people were doing that. I say people, they may have been, they were logged on and probably using a script with AI to do that. Now, the reason I'm doing that, I mean, is that I am afraid AI will misrepresent the data. And yeah, so the mythology database is free to use, although patrons and YouTube members do have access to features and facilities and extra usage sort of credits compared to other people. But it is free to use. They just get benefits because they support me, and I'll aim to keep it free to use. But yes, I for now I'm keeping the data away from AI. Although AI can quite happily go to the sources where I get my data from, if they're available in electronic form, and view those. So they could get it, they just can't put it in the structured format I have. And the advantage of the database is the thing that most people really like is the geographical data, to be able to visualize a distribution of a myth. But yeah, so I'll be interested to hear from my patrons if they think I should give it to AI. There we go. Darren says Mahabharata's 18 books. Okay, I have a 10-book version. I don't think I'm missing 8. Perhaps they've got books within the books, probably. So another question from question mark. Is there any plan to combine the Great Tree of Religion with a Folklore database? Right. So the Great Tree of Religion is created by my friend Simon Davis, which is a fantastic map about how religion probably evolved. Now, I wouldn't say it's not fit for academic reference per se, but it is really useful if you want to get a good idea of what things are happening. So I probably wouldn't take the data in its current form, but I did help Simon, I've got to provide a little bit of input and the like, and some verification on certain bits of information. And I've got much of that in a spreadsheet, and part of me would like to find a way to map those things on to my global map, so you can see things like that. And people who follow me from the beginning of time know that I would love to have a temporal awareness in my maps, so you can turn a dial to travel through time and see things change as time changes. And if I could do that with the data in the Great Tree of Religion, then we can see how religion ebbs and flows across the landscape of the world over time. And that would be brilliant. I don't know how much demand there is for it, but I would love to do that at some point. But it's probably some way off, because I'm also writing a couple of books at the moment. So I finished a draft of one of them, but that's the sci-fi novel I'm just writing for fun. The other book is still slowly going along, but hasn't done anything for the last couple of weeks because of everything going on. So just got too much to do, but I maybe one day. It's certainly in my thoughts there, question mark. So you have another question. Right. There is a figure in Sumerian mythology who is half man, half fish. Yes. Abgul. There is a similar motif in Africa, the Nomo of the Dogon people in Mali. Can you talk about this motif? I'm not familiar with Nomo. Let me see if I have any data on him. Nomo. Oh, look at that. Yes, Nomo is in Mali. So let me what I'm doing, in case you're not familiar, is I'm going to the mythology database. So just type in Nomo, and you've got 2 hits here. We've got a number of stories. So yeah, Dogon tribe. So we see where we got. Let me scroll up a bit. Where we have locations and some of them aren't hyperlinks, that's where we have corrupt data, which is why I'm trying to fix mythology database. So yeah, there's stories there about rainbow bridges. That is interesting. And fish. So I don't know about it, but if you want to know more, EBM, I don't know how you pronounce your name, look up Nomo in the mythology database, and yeah, you've got access to the stories. There's also these numbers at the end, if you're not familiar with them, on these titles. These are what I call Arne Thompson Uther index references, and so they're quite specific, and they're all different, which is interesting. So it means these are stories with to some very different aspects to them, although the Arne Thompson Uther index doesn't use mythemes like we do in computational comparative mythology, so these may have a lot of similarities. I mean, these 3 are I references, so yeah. But if you click on any of these, read in English. You haven't got the references. This is why I'm trying to fix the database, so I can look for that. I mean, if you're on a YouTube member or patron, and there's a motif you want to look up and it hasn't got the data and I haven't fixed it yet, just let me know, and I will try and prioritize that to be fixed. So then you'll get the data and you'll get the references to look more up about that story. So I hope that helps. So the data is there. We just need to tweak it a bit. But I'll look at that myself a little later, because that sounds quite an interesting story. Right. Oh, Flatgast. It's been a whoa. Right. Yes. So I have a Star. People are talking about Star Trek. So one of my claims to fame is I've actually been on the Next Generation Star Trek ship, like all the stage set at Paramount Studios, LA. I had a friend who was a friend with the executive producer, Jerry Taylor, and I've got some photos there, which I won't show you because my hair was going through a moment. So you see me with nice young hair, but I was going through a strange moment in my life. You definitely don't want to see that. Or well, perhaps if enough people like this live stream, then I will show you. So we'll see. So yeah, click the like button. I keep forgetting to say these things. If you want to see a picture of me in the captain's chair on the Starship Enterprise. Right. So another question by Sean. Do you think the Iliad and Odyssey are the only 2 of 8 or more parts of the total Homeric epic? So they're the only parts we have that we have sort of manuscripts of. The others, say, are lost. I mean, it'd be great if we can find them or reconstruct them, but I don't. I mean, there are people far better placed than me to understand how possible that is and how much you can do that. I did briefly talk about it in my video on Troy, so I've got a video on Troy somewhere. Let's go. I can't do it. Can I do that? Give me one moment. I'll try not to break my computer. There we go. And I can. Let's see if I can go. There we go. Yes. So if I go. So yeah, I think in this video that I talk about the epics, like and what they're made up of. I'm 90% sure that if it isn't, talk to me, Sean, and I'll try and fix that. But yeah, that video talks about the Greek epic cycle. I have another question. Okay, Lindsay. In the Mahabharata, Vishvakrama designs a house called Shivam. It catches fire, but there's a secret escape route. What motif would that be? It is found in Merlin of Venesta. Right. What motif? Escape. So fleeing from danger is a massive myth. In fact, people talk about the hero's journey a lot, okay? fleeing danger is far more popular. Now, I don't think this is going to work. I haven't played with the mythology database. No. Oh, I have broken the myth themes in the mythology database. This is bad, John. Right. I'll have to fix that. Basically, when the myth themes did work in the mythology database, it would show them, and fleeing from danger is probably the most well narrated myth theme there is. So that's what you'd look for. So it's not a motif; it's more of a myth theme. But to look for flee for danger. That could. I don't know if there a look at mythology database. No, it doesn't come up with any flee from danger. So I'll try and fix, Lindsay, the myth themes on the mythology database. Let me write that down before I forget, because I do so many things. Broken. And when that's working, I'll make a YouTube post about it. And if you click it, you'll see that. And then you can see which narratives and motifs have that. So that helps. Bithar says he doesn't like databases anymore. Yeah, so at least my database does point to the original information, or will do a lot more than it does at the moment. So don't give it to AI. Everyone's okay. That's fine. Temporal awareness would be spectacular in a map. Absolutely, I'd love to do that. So someone asked, Darren, it's asked, apart from Homer, what are the primary sources for Greek myth that is accessible? In the other Greek myths, so I try and stay away from Greek myths. I've said this because it's very complicated. But Hesiod is, his Theogony is well worth a read. If you want to go and look at some great sources, it's the Iliad library. So, you get little green books. You also get red books. So basically, you go green is Greek, red is Roman, but Latin in effect. So you have different books. So, but I don't know if these are free to read online. But if you look up Leob, L-E-O-E-B, they will have. They will have all the different Greek myths in there. So. Use that. Ovid and Latin sources, the Roman source, is also interesting. Although it is Roman, it does leverage a lot of Greek sources. But yeah, Hesiod's Theogony is probably where I would start with Greek myth. But it is complicated. There are multiple versions of the same stories, and so yeah, it is very difficult to write a sort of a canonical story. I know people have tried. I think Stephen Fry has a book called Mythos, which may try to do that. I haven't read that, but yeah, it's challenging. But that's where I would go if you want to read those things. Metamorphosis, absolutely, Ovid's work. All right, another question. So, what is the earliest archaeological evidence of a ceremonial burial for a dog? Oh, now that's a really interesting question. So that's an interesting question because dogs, ceremonial ritual is probably word. I think I'm going to change the word ceremonial to ritual. And there are burials we see with dogs, and I think the one found in England at 15 or 14,600 years ago was a dog buried with a person. So you could argue that. But we also find that, and yes, but you don't know if that was ritualized or they were just unfortunate and a rock fell on them both at the same time. So it's hard to tell. but they were buried together. But what we do find, certainly in the Indo-European space, which I'm more familiar with, is that dogs were considered creatures that could walk between realms. So they went from the other world to this world and back again. And that meant that if you died, you'd let your dog eat you, because eat the dead body. So that when it consumed the dead body, it could walk to the other world and drop it off there. And that also led to the stories of things like werewolves, because the dogs were considered to be human inside. So they turned themselves inside out at particular times to be human, or humans turned themselves inside out to be dogs. And that's how the werewolf came about. So dogs have been used in rituals for thousands of years. So that, we can go back probably 5,000 years, and you're seeing that sort of behaviour in Persia or Indo-Iran. But in terms of actual burials, not an archaeologist, but certainly the one in Britain at 14,000 years ago is probably the earliest, because it is the oldest dog we know of. Also, we've got the one in Anatolia, but I don't think that is associated with a burial. That means that places like Göbekli Tepe probably had dogs running around, domesticated dogs, and so are some of the pictures of dogs on the pillars. Are they domestic dogs or are they wild dogs? I thought, but yeah, interesting. I have Exit has asked me a question. Have I made a video about Hanno the Navigator? No, I haven't. I don't know his mythology and whether he discovered Ireland. I'd say it's very unlikely Hanno discovered Ireland, but I don't know the myth. So yeah, well, I'm not familiar with him, but I'll look that up at some point. Question mark. Do you still have time also to write the book of religions? You were once saying you want to write a book, so how religions evolved. Yes. So I do have a lot of notes. I won't even call it a draft book for that. Hundreds of pages about that. And I've got a really interesting idea on how to present that. So yes, that will happen. That will happen after the first two books. One, which is just a novel, just to get a book out for me. Everybody should write a book, so to speak. And one on the eldest stories. So that is coming, question mark. I do want to do that. And when I get more time. So once the mythology database has this data update and a couple of extra functionality things, I can put that to one side again for a while, because it will be self-managing at that point if people can submit stories. And then I've slowed down making videos to one a month because of the time it takes. I mean, it really is tough to read a lot of papers and books and to write sort of a video. It's literally like doing a mini, a reasonably major essay, I'll probably call it, back studying at uni every month, and it takes a lot, and it's annoying because I find there are YouTube channels out there that have almost certainly taken my work and put it behind a faceless YouTube channel and getting hundreds of thousands of views and making up stuff and intertwining it with my own research and giving no credit, and it really is frustrating and a bit demoralizing as well. So yeah, I don't know what to do about that. I do talk about credibility and how you deal with it. Most people want entertainment. I'd rather have. To me, I'm happy with my small but incredibly delightful community of smart people asking great questions is wonderful. But it does frustrate me that the work's being misrepresented. So yes, as things slow down because of things like that, I'll have more time to write books, and a book on religion would be, I'd love to write that. Lots of different thoughts there. So yeah, just time is the enemy, really. Lindsay, Mything broke. Time for the single malt. Well, I hope it's a good single malt. On tea for now. I was out yesterday with my friends drinking. They're on a pub, catching up on life. I don't want to touch more alcohol for a while. Oops. Green thumb. Thank you. I've actually seen a message. Don't forget to hit. Yes, don't forget to hit the like button. It really makes a difference. Green thumb. Thank you so much for that support. Really appreciate that. And to everybody, yes, if you can press the like, you also get to see a picture of me on the Starship Enterprise, which I promised you as well. So thank you so much, Green Thumb. I've got to work out how to do that right. So let's scroll down. I might have missed some questions. Wait, this is a slow part. There's another question. Right. Stuart says, as you're moving more towards it being a folklore database, what then counts as a good reference? So folklore is the term that encompasses myth, legend, and folk tale. So a reference needs to be usually a book that you can refer to, because someone's then already done the work of acknowledging that story. And then what we'd do is we wouldn't copy that story, we just summarize it because of copyright and the like, and you want people to go to the source. But this does raise a really interesting question about folklore, and what is folklore. And folklore is, well, no one can agree what folklore is. Let's be honest about it, which is really frustrating. And one of the reasons why I think many folklorists don't understand computational comparative mythology and how we do that. But folklore to me are stories that people can, and narratives like songs as well, and rituals that people perform without being taught them, like formally, or without being initiated to do them. So examples I could use for that are often you singing songs at a sports match or performing things. People just do them. You're not taught them. You hear them and do it. Let's say you're in a pub drinking your single malt, and a song comes on the jukebox. I don't know what it could be. Some popular song. Kings of Leon, Sex on Fire. Come on, everybody would sing that. That's not folklore. You have been, initiated into singing that by someone playing the song. But if you're in a bar and you're drinking your single malt, and then people want to sing on the, I don't know, Loch Lomond, I take the high road, you take the low road, and I'm in Scotland before ye, just out of the blue, then that is folklore, a folk song. So, yes, some things may not be noted down in a book, and so providing there's a record of where and when it's done, then that may be enough. And so if things like songs at sports events, then note down a sports event and the like, and it may have been on a broadcast on cable or satellite, and then we know where or when, so people can see it. Then that would be good. So yeah, it is one of the challenges of studying and researching folklore is how do you capture that information. Right. Great question from SDO224. What is a good resource for the beginner to begin to understand the Vedas? Wow. Understand the Vedas. I mean, to read the Vedas, there's one translation which really stands out, and I am struggling to think of who wrote it. It's three people, I think, wrote it. It is Griffith, I think. Is it? You're Griffith. That doesn't seem right to me. It is. Let's see if we got a copy of it. Can you buy it on Amazon? Maybe not. 1 second. I'll get it off my shelf. So, in terms of a good translation, Jameson and Brereton's versions. So this is 4 volumes, really good, well noted. But so whilst that allows you to read the Rig Veda clearly in English, it doesn't necessarily let you understand it. And there'll be a lot of people who follow that religion who will say just reading it means you don't necessarily understand it, and an English translation loses some of what is trying to be transmitted in the original. So to actually learn that, I think you need to spend time with people who understand the religion, who can explain it to you. But I don't think, much like the Bible, there'd be multiple interpretations of different passages. But certainly the Jameson translation of the Rig Veda is worth getting. There are electronic versions of the book because the book's quite expensive. If you want to do that, so that's what I would recommend. Someone said they read Mythos. So Darren McCauley said he's read Mythos, but it's by Stephen Fry. It's great, but it is retelling. So yes, Stephen Fry's sort of translated, the book in his words. And Goff's Cave, is the Somerset dog. Yes, that's right. Right. So Wolfie has got a question about cats. There we go. So cats were guardians that could see dogs, and dogs were the fairy. What? So cats was guardians that could see, and dogs were the fairy. Ah, right. That's what you mean. So cats can see the dead, and dogs ferried them to the other world. Are the cats seeing the dead? I don't know if that's a modern bit of folklore or not. I don't know. I think the issue is that cats see in a slightly different spectrum of light in a different way, so they see things that we don't necessarily pick up on in terms of resolution, which is why you often see them looking into what looks like blankness. But yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting point. I don't know. That's if ever we make a cat video, I'll look into that. Yes. So another question by Vithar. Do you think that the witch Golvig the Volospor is Freya? Aha. It said they burned and killed her multiple times, kicking off the Assyrian War. I wonder if it's the source. Right. So the very first video I ever launched on my YouTube channel, which is quite embarrassing, but I wanted to do it, was this one, and it's me trying to tell the story of Odin getting this CRS out of the ground. So watch that, and please don't. It's quite cringe, I think the kids would say. So for people who don't know, Odin wanted to find out what was going to happen to his life, wanted to find out the future, and he pulled a CRS out the ground who had died in the Assyrian War, and asked her to tell him the future. And that's how he found out about Ragnarok and how he could have tried to avoid death, because that made him want to learn more so he could avoid it. Some people think that CRS is Freya. I do not think that is Freya. I think there is a CRS, an old, not necessarily primordial being, but it's a goddess of, or potentially an old goddess or something. It's incredibly interesting. Hopefully, if you ignore my awful sound effects and voice changing on that video, you'll get an idea of the depth of it. And it's something I always want to do, is really explain this Norse myth and how this thing happened, because there's so much in the Volospor about mythology that's sort of assumed you have knowledge of it to get to the point where you are. But it certainly is the source story for Odin to know to go on a journey to learn. But it was a source of where he understood what was going to happen to him. But yeah, I don't think that is Freya, because why would Freya? be buried there, and dead, where she continued to live elsewhere. Canonically, it doesn't make sense. So I don't think it is, but it is a really interesting story. I do love the Volaspor and the start of it, and as you say, my own interpretation. So hopefully, yeah, you'll like that. I have a question from Kamran. So, do you think other hominins told stories? Yes. So I made a video recently, actually. It was the let me find latest videos. Yes. So if I whiz here, there's a video called "The Genius Neanderthal." Watch that, and I actually talk about that particular question in there. But yes, I believe Neanderthals spoke, and if Neanderthals spoke, they certainly probably would have told stories. They had musical instruments and things. So yeah, it is fascinating to think. If you think that, what were they saying? And as I spoke about earlier, which if you were one of the people watching when I started, we do believe, or there is a theory now from David Reich, that Neanderthals were actually human, but just were found themselves in a position where archaic DNA replaced much of the Homo sapien stuff. Right, so let me look for other questions. I'm just whizzing through them all. So it's just right. Yes, so I think I'm at the end of the questions now. Right, so where are we? 9:15. I think for once, everyone, we've actually managed to talk about all the things we wanted to talk about in a live stream. Well done, marvellous. I don't know how I managed that. It's a first, I think, which is amazing. So, yeah, thank you all for your support. Thank you for coming along. Thank you for asking some great questions. If you want me to post anything, let me know. I'll work on the mythology database, fix the mything thing tomorrow, and then I'll work on the Odyssey video for you. But that's what was sort of slowing things down, the mythology database. I've literally worked super long hours over many days to get it to where it is, but we've now got a near automated process, with the exceptions of now having to manually translate several thousand cultural names and traditions names, that you will see a huge difference on there, and then we can enhance the functionality and maybe automatically get the bibliographical references up rather than just the sort of citation sort of reference. So hope that makes sense. Right, we've got, there is a question. Right, so Vithar had a question. Don't Europeans have more Neanderthal DNA than other races? Right. So what we find is most Europeans have more what we consider Neanderthal DNA than other parts of the world. But everybody outside of sub-Saharan Africa has some Neanderthal DNA. And that's basically all to do with how we wandered around and met people. But most of that DNA comes from, we believe, a period of two main interactions with Neanderthals in the Near East, or the Saudi Peninsula. And there's a paper available that talks about where we think that actually happened. And there may have been a couple of other instances of that in Europe, which helped persist that. So that's the reason for that. We think it's more generally, say the Neanderthals being human was more to do with Homo sapiens, then breeding with an earlier form of hominin, and then getting the archaic DNA from that and being constrained within a landscape before eventually maybe the older hominin died out and what then became the Homo sapiens with archaic DNA, Neanderthals as we would call it, then spread across Europe. I don't know enough about it. It'd be interesting to see how Denisovans then came to be, or perhaps the Homo sapiens, they say, have been around a million years. Perhaps, the ancestor of Homo sapiens would have been around a million years ago. And perhaps it was Homo sapiens who were trapped somewhere and got with amount of DNA. I don't know. It's an interesting question. Interesting thoughts. I'd like to see more come from that. I don't know if many other people who are more familiar with DNA have picked up on that to talk about it. But I'll look out for those. Hello, Arselrilin. I butchered your name there. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Wolfie. Thanks for a fascinating live stream. You're welcome. And Helen. Hello. Yes, you've been quiet. Thank you for a wonderful discussion. Yes, thank you there. Oh, a couple more questions. Let me answer these questions. Oh my God, lots of questions. Right. Question from Vladagast. You get to resurrect one written source that we know of. You get the original, no scribal errors. What do you choose? I would... so much. I would say the Poetic Edda, because we are missing some pages from it. And it would, the original version may have had extra poems in as well, but there certainly are poems and alterations to it that I'd like to take back, because that would allow us to understand a fair bit more about Old Norse mythology, and I do like Old Norse mythology. So I'm a bit biased there. There's probably better things for mythology to look at, but like Rig Veda or even Homer's work. I mean, you can never have enough original manuscripts at a glance. So as many as possible. Yes, thank you, everyone. Thanks for all the great questions. I think hello from Berlin. You've just caught the end of this. Sorry. I'm about to say goodbye, I think. Someone said to the Vedas as well, yes. Right, so with that, thank you all for your support. Thank you all for your great questions. Oh, my Alexa just said sweet dreams to me. So thank you, Alexa, for listening to my chat. Yes, thank you. Take care. I will speak to you all in a couple of weeks, I hope on another live stream or on Patreon or the YouTube members' comments. So until then, please stay safe and well. And I'll have a great Sunday if you've got much of it left. And we'll talk soon. Toodle pip.